Prosperity to me is any kind of growing economy that is going to leave the next generation better off than we found it. And that's what I care about. That's what I'm looking for. I want to see an America that is growing. And if you look at prosperity from that perspective, it's a lot easier to get a handle on the prosperous years or the prosperous times. When you start putting worldly numbers to prosperity, it gets a lot more difficult and a lot more subjective. But I would say that prosperity, we ought to be striving, because I think we have a responsibility to our next generation. And I would go so far as to say we have a biblical responsibility to the next generation. And you've often heard me say, I want to recognize the country in which my grandchildren are living in someday when they're adults. I want to be able to recognize it. I want to know that if my grandson wants to be the biggest and best carpenter contractor in a 5-state area, that he's going to have the opportunity to do it. If he wants to be the best brain surgeon in the world, he's going to have the opportunity to do it. And I want to know that we are a country that is strong militarily, that is strong monetarily, and that there is prosperity opportunity for all classes of people. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't like this. I don't care about it, doesn't matter to me. But a lot of people don't. And that unfortunately means, for some, not for me, that the rich people have opportunity to get richer. That's what it means. It means that if you're worth $500 million, you have an opportunity to be a billionaire. If you're worth $500,000, you have an opportunity to be a millionaire. That the rich are going to get richer, and the middle class are going to get wealthier, and people in the poverty rate have opportunities to get out and to become looking towards the middle class, that a factory worker should be able to put his child through college, that those kinds of things that we had during the Industrial Revolution are not that far away, and I think they're obtainable. But to me, that's prosperity. It is probably not prosperity to Hillary Clinton. When we look at the Clintons, we never look at, and this doesn't even get talked about, we never look at the situation is, here's two people, Bill and Hillary Clinton, that have been in public life all their life and have a net worth of over $100 million. How's that happen? I mean, somebody tell me, because I don't know how that happens. It can't happen. I can look at Donald Trump and say, here's a man who's worth $1 billion. I know how that happens. I can walk down Broad Street in New York City and know how that happens. I can see it. I get it. I understand it. He worked for it, or his father worked for some. There were or thousands of people have helped contribute to that, and he makes no bones about it. But look, our prosperity is skewed, and right now, we are poised to make things worse in this country, in the sense that we've got a Hillary Clinton who is pandering to the royal elite politicians in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. We've got all these elitist Republicans. They don't want Donald Trump. He threatens their elite status. He threatens them. And he threatens the progressives. And look, so prosperity is different to everybody, for certain. For me, we have an obligation to leave the next generation better off than we found it. Are we on the track to do that? No, we're not. What we're on track to do is create a much larger entitled society. That's what we're on track to do. That's what we have done for 10 10 straight years, but there's been some breaks in the first two. But we have been doing that. We could basically say 16 years, 17 years if we want to go back. But for the last 8 years, we have grown the entitled class of this country, both those that are dependent upon government to sustain them and both those that are entitled in the very wealthy sense. And the whole in between has been left out. And that's got to stop if we are going to see prosperity. The problem with prosperity is envy and greed. Nobody wants to say the rich are going to get richer and be okay with it, because that's the class warfare thing that works all the time, because there's always people that want what Donald Trump has. I don't care what Donald Trump has. I'm perfectly happy what I have. But we need the Donald Trumps of the world to lead society into a greater place of prosperity in the next generation. The problem is, poor people have egos too, and poor people have envy issues too, and believers have envy issues too, and atheists have envy issues too. And that's where we are in our society. It's not where I am. So when I talk about these things, I talk about it from a totally different perspective than everybody else. And I say that all the time for fear that people will forget and think that I'm talking about it like a Warren Buffett would talk about. I'm not. I'm talking about America. And I'm talking about getting America back on track to leading future generations into prosperity, to be the moral compass of the world, and to be a military might that nobody is going to mess with. That's what I care about, because they're the fundamental principles that all the other good things are going to come from, in my opinion. That's what I believe.